Anyway. They know what they're getting at this point. They're doing it because they like mental health, not because we're actually entertaining.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Now that the 4th of July is over, nailing it.
Doing great so far. I'm celebrating this independence.
We're making the rest of this month National Airing of Grievances.
Oh, no.
Festivus! And now, broadcasting from the Churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Oh, July 4th. Yeah. What's the old joke? They say, do you guys have a July 4th in your nation? And they're like, yeah, there's a July 4th in every nation. You guys get it? Because
yeah, we get it.
Synonymous with our one holiday.
Yeah, I'm sure later on tonight I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and just start laughing.
It'll hit
at
you.
that joke.
Yeah, that's when it hits you. It's a sleeper. That one gets to you later.
Yep.
So yeah, we had a firework fiasco. If you'd like to hear more about that, go to patreon.com/therapy. Also, go to podtherapybaitshop.com and get you a Batmom shirt. The real one. Go get the good Batmom shirt. The one with the cool cartoon on it that's worn by Jim's actual mom.
It feels like he's just asking for
Who's
it.
in fact a human.
You know what's really interesting though is that the Hey Scoops ice cream social shirt, which we were gifted tonight.
Oh yeah, God, go to patreon.com/therapy. Jacob literally did an entire theatrical pre-planned thing to music that involved stripping himself and throwing things at our faces. Go to patreon.com/therapy.
In my opinion, the mom on their Batmom shirt does actually look quite a bit like your mom.
It's not far.
But with red hair.
Yeah. I like that it's like generic 1950s mom. Yeah. And my mom doesn't have blue eyes. My mom is of Spanish descent.
Oh no, bats don't have blue eyes.
This is true. This is just true.
Are all bats of Spanish descent?
Yeah, so now I actually have this shirt. I don't even have one of our shirts. I should probably buy one.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Jesus. Somehow we're losing our own fight. I don't know how this happened. Somehow we just got flanked. Go to Pod Therapy Bait Shop.
I mean, do we need to explain what's going on with Jim's Batmom for the listeners of our show who aren't listeners of ICS?
Yeah, I
probably
think
not.
ICS
Do you wanna
probably is
explain?
more aware. Yeah, how ICS...
Well, Jim's mom is a bat.
Yeah, Jim's mom's a bat.
Yeah.
Explained.
There we go. All right.
Mom is a bat. So childhood was fun. And appreciated not
Inside joke explained.
Ding, ding. We've got some interesting letters to read. The first one is a little heavy, a little bit on the heavier variety. We have had this one sitting in the hopper for a minute. It's been hard to find a good time to read it because, we've been doing a lot of pod therapy after dark during the summer, and we're usually like, a glass of whiskey in. So we always figured that would not be appropriate. So today we're going to read it, and it's a little bit of an intense one, so buckle up. Okay, my sister has been dying for 12 years. Thanks for your very interesting podcast. I'm happy to see a podcast out there that can be great for learning about mental health while also being fun and funny. I think mental health should be number one most important focus point for our nation and the world. Well, thank you. I have an older sister, we're both in our 40s, who almost died 12 years ago from antiphospholipid syndrome, APS. This means her body constantly attacks itself. Lungs, brain, kidneys, liver are all in a very low level of functioning status, including, though she won't admit or address this, dementia. After the incident 12 years ago where she almost died and lost her colon, I spent a lot of time taking care of her. My son graciously helped out too. We tried to make sure she did not have to exert herself much and kept her company, as being alone is very difficult for her. She spent the next 12 years acting like every day could be her last. Fast food several times a day, a case of Mountain Dew every day, smoking, spending money into extreme debt, and accumulating 3 80-pound dogs, a cat, and a parrot. After about 5 years, I began to pull away as she was able to do more for herself, but just wouldn't. I'd still visit her several times a week to help keep her spirits up and try to encourage better behavior, but I stopped doing all of her chores for her and only helped when she really needed it. In the past few years, my son stopped having anything to do with her because she's become so bitter, mean, and demanding. She won't get therapy. Well, she went once and said her therapist told her she did not need therapy because considering her life, she was quite mentally well. I know the truth is that she is close-minded and refuses to take steps to change anything because that would force her to admit that she was doing anything wrong in her life, and she would have to do the hard work of changing some aspects. Cut to 2020. I got breast cancer. It was a quick process for me from diagnosis to now being cancer-free. She made me feel like I'm not allowed to have issues or be sick because that's her role. 6 months later, she even forgot I had a mastectomy, but I know that might be the dementia. Then she got evicted from her house. With 5 pets and terrible debt, she was unable to find a new place to live that she could afford. She was going to have to rehome her pets, which are her world. She has no kids or boyfriend, etc., just me. So I, very quickly, purchased a home big enough for her and moved her in. It was very difficult at first and continues to be weird because no matter what I do, she acts like I am her enemy. Her dogs are aggressive, one person has even been bit, and several close calls, but she refuses to admit that any of them are dangerous or use any muzzles. And she is quite gross in comparison to my very clean lifestyle. I'm dealing with all this just fine, because I know she is not mentally well, and I'm the safe target for her anger and depression. I just focus on finding solutions to the things I can help with, and let any problems I can't just roll off. What I'm having a hard time with is my own thoughts of wishing she would just die already. Not that I really wish she would, but she constantly talks about how she is just barely holding on and expects everyone to treat her like she's about to die any day, and it has been this way for 12 years. It has been so exhausting. I really feel for her having to live with her condition. APS really is a terrible disease. Is this a common feeling for caretakers to have, to wish them dead? How long can someone be dying for? I'm having to be her everything. Her sister, her mother, her cleaning lady, her voice of reason, and be nice even when she's having a mental or physical episode and is unkind to everyone around her and continuing to smoke, eat crappy, and spend money stupidly. How do I both help her as her brain and body further deteriorate and also not wish she would die? To be clear, I'm an empathic person. I can't hear someone talk about an injury without almost feeling the pain too, and I'm always the sympathizing, understanding, non-judgmental friend people I know go to when they're having issues. But I can't go more than a day without thinking, just die already, about my sister. It is beginning to outweigh my loving thoughts and feelings I once had for her. People say to draw boundaries and tell her to move out, but I just know it will not sit well on my mind to do that, knowing her condition will only worsen. She is currently still working full-time and basically able to live on her own, but that is only going to last until her dementia affects her job or ability to make reasonable choices. Honestly, I have a feeling that she only still has a job because she is protected by a union. Her doctors want her on disability, but she owes disability $40,000 due to taking money after she went back to work 10 years ago. I'd rather her take advantage of my kindness than have to live with the guilt of her living in the gutter, which was her plan before I bought a house. I just want to know if this thought happens to many other caregivers. I can't find anything about it on the internet. And what's a good strategy for redirecting that thought? I do plan to start therapy myself soon. Thanks so much for your thoughts, guys. Love the podcast. Tina.
All right.
That has to be common.
Yeah.
That thought has to be common.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't even seem odd to me, honestly.
No, it doesn't.
Like, it's sad because the situation is sad, but like having that thought does not even seem strange to me.
No, and I've heard of this before. This is not anything new that I haven't heard from other people in similar situations. And Tina, you're a saint for jumping in and doing all of this work. This is really, really tough. And the only way you can do it, it seems, is if you really love somebody. Because, I mean, I would not do this for Jim.
No.
And
God.
Jim would not do this for me.
Well, I would, but
yeah,
because I
Jim's health is
really
relatively
love you.
okay, and I think almost daily about how it would be better if he died.
Yeah, the other day I stubbed my toe, and Jacob was like calling the crematorium, like just in case. Just want to go and make an appointment. I don't know if we're gonna keep it, but I just want to get ahead of the rush.
No,
Beat the lunch rush.
Always a lunch rush at the crematorium.
I think don't feel bad. I would not feel bad about this. This is a common thing because I think a way to look at this would be almost kind of like I mean, what are you really saying when you're saying that?
Mm.
When you're really having those thoughts of I wish she would die already, it's almost like what you're saying is I wish this suffering would end.
Oh, yeah.
Not just hers, yours as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfectly healthy thing. I mean, no one wants to suffer and no one wants to see anybody else suffer. And I think I kind of get the sense that that's kind of what you're saying when you're having that thought of, you're really just having that thought of, I wish this was over.
This
Right.
feels like a graduated level of the feeling that you get when you have family staying at your home for a long time,
Hmm.
and maybe like a month or so,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 weeks into that month,
Right.
you're just going like, oh, I'm about ready for everybody to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You love your family.
Yeah.
You're happy that they're at your home and that they're visiting and everything.
Right.
But life is easier when you don't have a house full of people.
Right. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I think
I
everybody
think
relates
there's
to
just
it.
a bigger version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me, so like I don't know that there's a clinical term for this kind of dynamic, but it's something similar to like perpetual helplessness. Like you're talking to this human who like does need your help to some extent, but like they do need to start becoming independent and like doing things on their own. Like Tina was talking about, like, hey, we cleaned for her, we did everything for her, and then like she just continued to throw herself into the wind. Like, I'm just gonna drink and smoke. I'm gonna get all these animals. I'm gonna get into debt. Like, who cares? And it's like it's almost similar to addiction stuff, like where this person's living in like this really unsustainable, self-indulgent, devil-may-care kind of way, and sometimes they are on a trajectory to die. Sometimes there is like depression or chronic pain, or we've seen that tons of times in rehabs, especially with pain medicine addicted people. They may have a very serious illness. And sometimes they're throwing caution in the wind, even with that kind of stuff. And it's very hard for the families to confront them and say, like, dude, you need to live responsibly, or you need to, not abuse these substances, or you need to not, like destroy yourself financially or whatever. And they just don't have any concern for themselves at that point. And it's very hard to watch as a family member, because you know that person is depressed and broken and sad and lonely and hopeless and hurting and sick and not well. But at the same time, they become this anchor that is dragging you under the water too. And it's a very hard boundary to navigate, because it's not like if you're dealing with somebody who's completely well in that sense, that you can let go of them and let them hit the ground, because they're going to have to learn on their own from their pain. You look at a person like this and you think, this is like hospice. Like you're still able to work, but like you're losing your mind. Like you do have a disease that will probably be terminal and end your life. It's just taking longer than any of us anticipated, which is good. We're glad you're hanging on, like good, but wow, it's a slow motion death and train wreck. It's a really hard thing to draw a boundary with, I think.
Well, I think it's a hard thing to draw a boundary with also because, like, the whole thing of, like, drawing a boundaries, it's almost kind of like, if Jim and I were hiking, we're doing a week-long or 2-week-long trail, and let's say he's a little faster than I am, so he's up ahead of me by,
out.
about a mile or so.
Feels right, yeah.
And I see, as I'm walking down this trail, I see Jim's cup.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, Jim's going to need that. So I'm going to pick that up. When we camp tonight, I'll give it back to him. So we camp, I give it to him.
Right.
And the next length of the trail, I see his cup again. So I better pick that up. Go another 300 yards, and I see his pan that he cooks with.
Right.
He'll need that too. So
Sleeping bag.
I'll pick that up too.
Right.
Give it to him the next day. And then the third day, now I see a sleeping bag and the other 2 items, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And Jim is learning, I don't have to carry this shit.
Right.
Because
right.
Nick's got it.
Yeah.
Nick will pick it up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that starts happening when we get into like enabling and things like that. When in reality, if I really wanted to, I should just, he dropped his cup. He's going to miss that tonight.
He's not going to have
And
a
then
cup
I just
now.
keep going.
Yeah.
And then, you want your cup? Well, I saw it back there. You better go
Right.
grab it.
Yeah.
Now, that can be very dangerous to do that.
Yeah.
You never want to do that in a situation where there's domestic violence.
Right.
Number
right,
one.
Right.
But then also, that may work in some situations, but may not work in this particular situation, only because your sister seems to have this attitude of, well, I'm dying anyway, who cares?
Right.
And in which case, I don't think she's going to be concerned. Like, if she knows you're going to pick up the slack, even if you stop, I'm not sure that she's going to, like that's going to change anything.
Right. I don't necessarily see a right turn
because she could
here.
still continue to pile up debt. She can still
Yes.
continue to do unhealthy behaviors,
Right.
all of that, because it's not an issue of I need to survive and my sister's going to pick up the slack. It's an issue of, well, I'm dying anyway.
Right.
So,
And that's a very hard thing to reckon
yeah.
with. That's
Yeah.
very hard. But to come back to where I think Tina has made some awesome things happen here. So first, this idea of like I'm running out of empathy. There's a part of me that starts to think it would be a relief if this was no longer my reality and no longer this person's reality. So we have a word for that, and we've talked about it on the show multiple episodes, but we call it compassion fatigue. And it's something that lots of caregivers resonate with, even professional therapists and healthcare providers. We resonate with it, where we have somebody who has a chronic problem, it's permanent, and we're watching them relive their cycle of self-destruction or pain or agony or whatever it is, and eventually you hit fatigue, where your compassion has limits, and you start to need respite. You need to pull back from that, you need to rejuvenate, you need to have good strategy to approach that in a sustainable way. Boundaries especially are a really healthy thing you need for addressing compassion fatigue so that you're not getting sucked down the tube with them, which actually, Tina, you and your son started to do. You told us in that story and said, well, listen, there were times whenever, she was getting more and more able to take care of herself, was choosing not to. At that time, I pulled back. My son hung in there a little bit longer. At some point, he too pulled back, and we allowed her to live in her filth. And as hard as that is, there is an argument to be made that if you are not medically required to live in an assisted living program, if you are still deemed competent and independent enough to stay at home and you're not like hoarding or something and like the safety inspectors are coming to like condemn the house or something like that, then okay, you can leave people in that and you afford them the dignity of risk. And the dignity of risk is the principle that humans need to be free enough to make their own decisions as adults. And if they are mentally handicapped to the place where they cannot functionally make those, then we seize power of attorney and we make some choices with the health department, and then changes are made for that person's life. And they're probably going to be brought into some kind of assisted living program. That would make sense, especially if it's union insurance. Like that's going to be an option. Or we're going to have her declared disabled, and there's going to be some big changes. But short of that, yeah, allowing somebody the dignity of risk is not being unkind. That's not being, unloving. In fact, therapists would usually teach you that that's not just healthy for you as a boundary, it really allows them the dignity of experiencing the consequences of their choices. If every time I go to reach for a hot iron, you put your hand on that iron first to protect me, I'm learning nothing. Like Nick's example, I'm just learning that you're going to touch it for me or Nick's going to carry my stuff. I have to feel what it's like to not have a cup. I have to feel what it's like to not have a sleeping bag. I have to feel the burn of that hot iron. Pain is humanity's greatest teacher. And it's only through that humans will change. If they are not capable of that change because they are mentally unwell, which can happen, there is a level of care that society will allow that intervenes at that stage. But you can't be that level of care, Tina. There's supposed to be a higher level for that.
And I think I could see some people reacting to this and like saying, Tina, you're being an enabler. You need to stop doing that. You just need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't really necessarily agree with that.
No, I think she's done a good job.
Right, because I think one thing that you wrote, Tina, is that you said, I'd rather her take advantage of my kindness than have her live with the guilt of knowing that she's living in the gutter.
Yes.
So it seems to me like you made an educated decision.
It's your choice.
Yeah, like you kind of know what's coming. You know what comes with making that decision to buy her a house.
Right.
To give her a place to live.
Yeah.
You knew what was going to happen, and you've accepted that as part of the deal.
Yes.
Now, I think the second step in this is learning how to deal with that extra baggage that comes with it.
Right.
And that's where I would agree seeing a therapist would be very beneficial.
Yes.
She's not going to. That's fine. It would be great if she did, but she's not going to. I wouldn't really push that issue, but I would definitely, if I were in your position, I would definitely find somebody to talk to just kind of process some of these thoughts.
Right.
Kind of reframe some of these experiences, some of the thoughts that you're having. just to have somebody to kind of
Well, you got to do your own work. And I've been that therapist to the family member. I've had situations and cases where the family member that's presenting for therapy has a chronically ill, terminally ill family member, and that was always really difficult for them. Like, not just because of I'm scared for them, but that person was telling me, I sometimes just wish they would finally be done, because this person has also just been, hanging on forever, but this person also would use that as a weapon against the rest of the family. Like, oh, how dare you go off and live your life without me? You just want me to be dead, don't you? You never loved me. You never cared about me. And there was a lot of guilt and shame that would constantly be thrown at all the family members who had actually given so much to this person and rooted for them and helped them and been there for them. So it's a really painful situation, because the person, the chronically ill person, they are suffering. They are not well. And there's a million things going on, and we have to respect that. But Tina, at the end of the day, I agree with Nick. I think that you getting into therapy is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. That's what self-care is. With proper coaching from that therapist, learning which boundaries are worth drawing that are good for your sister and you. But then also what Nick said is on point, where he said, hey, you've made an educated choice. You have the freedom to choose. You've chosen to give a house. That is your contribution. You can have some basic limits as a landlord and say, hey, listen, I will not allow the house to fall into disrepair or something to that effect. Either you're going to take care of it or you're going to finance getting it taken care of. That's a proper boundary to have. But I think that you're allowed to say that. I don't want my sister living on the street. That's the line I'll draw.
Yeah.
Okay. You're allowed to do that.
You've gone above and beyond the thoughts that you're having. To me, it seems pretty reasonable. A lot of people that I know that have been in that situation have had those exact same thoughts.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're a bad person.
No.
At all.
No. And hang in there, Tina. And
Yep.
Glad to see that you're getting some help, and glad to hear that you're healthy and that your own prognosis has improved so quickly. That's very seriously great news to find out.
And you
about
mentioned trying to Google it and not being able to find things about it. Compassion fatigue.
That's it.
That's what you want to Google.
Yes, Google compassion fatigue. There's a lot of great articles out there on it. And if you go into our archives, go to podtherapy.net, go into the search bar and type in just fatigue, and you'll find, I think, 2 episodes in which we've done deep dives. One of them we did an A block on it, and we actually went through like 12 tips to avoid compassion fatigue.
God, I do not remember that at all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was years ago. That's how long we've been doing this, buddy. So we should stop. I think that's what I'm hearing. That's we're at the point where you forget the shows you've actually done. Stop doing them.
I'll forget this show by tomorrow.
Oh, I already forgot.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. And
I don't know what we
back,
did in the Patreon section for this show today. What did we talk about?
Oh, God. Fireworks.
4th of July
Oh,
stuff.
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. All right.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about coping with high-functioning autism. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robert Brownie Jr. Mintz, Kayla Lansbury, Crazy Manana Scoop, Malaya, and Cindy Ash.
Malaya
Would you like to sponsor the show? Become a Theraproducer at patreon.com/therapy.
Yep, still that one.
This week's trivia theme in honor of our Theraproducers is In the News.
In the nude.
These are stories that were in the news.
Nude?
And you have to answer the question from
In
the
the
story.
Taking
Bobby
off my
Reed
pants.
of Brooksville, Florida, was shocked to realize that instead of selling him a parcel of land for $55,000, the city accidentally sold him what instead?
For
I read
55
this. Oh.
grand?
If you'd like to join the
I know.
Theraproducers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
You know what it is, Jacob?
I believe I do.
What is it?
I believe they sold him the town's water tower.
Did they?
They did.
No way! He owns the water rights to the town now? Not a bad deal for 55
He gave it
grand.
back.
Oh.
Yeah,
yeah,
the
that's probably
surprise purchase boiled down to a mix-up over the legal description of the property. Mark Cutney, a Brooksville city manager and friend of the pod, says the building Reed wanted to buy was never split off from the parents' property where the water tower is based, even though the city leaders were aware it was supposed to be.
Okay, there you go. Florida, still giving away your water rights. What are you going to do? Hang in there, Florida.
It wasn't water rights.
Oh.
It was the water.
It was the water.
And the tower that it came in.
Not the rights to these.
No.
It was the
actual water.
the means to it.
Yeah.
You can have all the rights you want. I own the water. All right, coping with high-functioning autism. Hi, guys. Long-time listener, first-time writing. At the moment, I am but a broke grad student, so I can't support the Patreon, but you helped me so much. As soon as I can, you're getting what you clearly deserve. That sounded cryptic.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Thank you for doing this show. You are helping so many people.
Somebody's gonna get a punch in the head.
I think that might be
you.
might be a
and
hit
it
out on
might
us.
be you.
So my question is, how to accept life after a new lifelong diagnosis? And what does accepting the new situation look like? Here's some context. I got diagnosed with autism 2 years ago at age 22. I'm a woman with high-functioning autism and comorbid depression. So unfortunately, it's a common occurrence. I had a decompensation episode and lost a lot of my functionality, as well as having severe sensory problems. But it happened as I was in grad school. I'm a molecular biology student doing a research-based master's. I need to function. There are real expectations on me. However, I have full days where I can't do anything at all. The pandemic helped hide my problems, but it's coming to an end at the moment. Going physically to school even one day has a negative impact on my functioning for days afterwards. We're talking stimming and tics, selective mutism, self-harm like headbanging and hitting, etc. So not something I want or feel I could do full-time. I'm talking barely cooking for myself, no reading, cleaning, talking, or most basic functions. I'm very fortunate to live in Canada and have access to free healthcare, so I'm followed by a team of mental health specialists with experience with autism. However, all tell me there's nothing much they can do. I modified my whole environment and routine. It helped me relieve about 10% of my symptoms. Medication helps, but it's no miracle either. So, no one wants to tell me I need to reassess my life goals, but I feel it's my only option. It's very depressing as I love life sciences and feel so close to my dream career after so many years of work. Do you have any advice, Anonymous? That is an interesting case.
Yeah, interesting case. So, here's something that's kind of interesting to me, and maybe I misunderstood it, but autism was something that you were recently diagnosed with.
At 22.
Right, but not something that recently developed.
Yeah, that would probably be my guess.
Right. So, I mean,
but these are very big symptoms.
Big
though,
symptoms,
to suddenly
but
onset.
and that's what I'm kind of curious about. And I'm not an expert in autism
or anything really.
True.
Yeah,
that's very apparent. I would defer to whoever is specializing in autism, somebody on your team that you're working with, but that would be the number one question I would have is it something that just kind of, where's that coming from all of a sudden, that this sudden onset of really significant symptoms? Because otherwise, I mean, it sounds, you even said yourself, you're a very high functioning person, high functioning individual. You're working on a master's in molecular biology.
Yeah, right.
Like that's amazing.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I mean, to have gotten where you're at right now, I think that's huge. I think it's a little early to say that you need to completely reassess everything that you're doing or that you need to give up on your dreams necessarily. I don't think, I mean, you had what it took to get into that master's program. They're usually pretty good at weeding people out and not accepting people who they think aren't going to be able to finish.
Right.
You've shown something, that you have that ability. You have the grades. You must have had the GPA. You must have been able to demonstrate your ability to complete projects. So you have everything that it took to get into that program. I think maybe what we need to focus on is coexistence with the diagnosis. And this, we run into this a lot with individuals that have a mental health diagnosis, something that comes up that is going to be with them for a long time. We don't try to, fool them and think that, oh, this is all just going to go away.
Right.
It's not.
We want them to live in reality.
Yeah, but it's not something that has to be on top of you, weighing you down. It's something that will walk alongside you. You learn to coexist with it. There's things that you're going to change, and you've already started. I mean, it sounds like you've already started changing a lot of things about how you live, and that has been helpful. And I think working with somebody who specializes in autism, they can probably help you with that extra. You already changed it 10%. Maybe they can help and add another 10%.
Yeah.
And it becomes something that you kind of coexist with.
Yeah.
You may have to do things differently than other people, but you can find a way to do it that you can still function and you can still pursue your dreams.
Yeah.
You love science. Don't give up on that.
Yeah, the case for optimism is strong.
Yeah.
I think. And also, I would argue in the last 2 years after your diagnosis and with your team, these are, and I hope this doesn't discourage you, these are still the early days of you learning to manage this diagnosis. To the point where it got severe enough that you were manifesting these kinds of symptoms to only recently have been diagnosed. That means you are still in the early era of you learning how to manage this, what stimuli you need to avoid, what things bring support, what help, what resources, what personal soothing techniques, and what medicines. So we're still in the early days, and I guess I realize that's an inopportune statement for you because, clearly these days are also grad school days and you'd like to have better management. So first I want to take a quick second to speak to the general audience because, we don't talk much about autism, so let's just take a second. So autism is a hardware situation. In other episodes of the show, you've heard Nick and I talk about kind of the 3 levels of how we think of mental health stuff. There's software stuff, which is like patterns of behavior and thinking that, your anxiety levels or depression levels, things like that. Behavior patterns that you're doing that are making things worse, like substance abuse. We consider those software in the sense that, your phone runs Twitter and Facebook. Those apps can be updated and have glitches, and a software programmer can work on them. Then there's firmware, which is like your Windows operating system in a computer, or Android or Apple. Like, it's the actual thing that runs all those programs. That's a little bit deeper in the network, right? Brains have that too, like a firmware kind of reality. And those would be things that we're talking about, like personality realities or something to that effect. Hardware problems have to do with the way the brain actually functions. It has to do with neurons and the way the brain has chemical states and functions. Autism lands in that basket. So autism is usually a lifelong diagnosis that usually manifests in childhood. It is possible that people will carry on throughout their years, and they may have kind of atypical behavior traits, certain ways of functioning, certain aversions, certain sensitivities, and over time we may discover that actually fits a pattern of being autistic. But what we've changed in the way we talk about autism is that we no longer see it as a binary diagnosis. We no longer see it as yes or no. We see it as a spectrum. And so we've actually changed the language in the most recent iteration of our mental health textbook, the DSM-5, to describe it as autism spectrum disorder. We used to have little categories of autism, like one at the lighter level that was called Asperger's, and a lot of people became more familiar with Asperger's being its own diagnosis. Today, Asperger's might be called high functioning. So all that's just a quick little lesson about what is autism. Autism can have lots of different traits, and it's really difficult to nail it all down into one thing because it's a whole constellation of realities, and it really depends on the signature brain development of that human. But some classic traits are some of the ones the writer talks about. Now, some of these are actually a little bit more intense than I would consider describing for high functioning. Things like selective mutism, which is the inability to speak at sudden times. Tics, which can be verbal sounds that people make or physical like motions that almost look like a glitch or some kind of fast reaction. They're involuntary, but they show up when the person might be significantly stressed or put in situations they can't understand. Stimming is a word that I'm not familiar with unless it means being overindulged in stimuli and a person becomes like spent, like their brain has seen and done enough data processing with other humans and situations that they are overstimulated and they just kind of mentally shut down and their emotions get really irritable and they need to pull back and get away. And the writer also talks about self-harm. Now that's headbanging and hitting for them, which again, you might hear that and think, oh my gosh, that person's suicidal, there's something dangerous here. Well, no, actually we do associate those traits with autism, and they usually are related to the idea of being overstimulated and the brain reaching kind of this maximum capacity point where they need to pull back. So understanding all that context to the listeners helps you understand what the writer's talking about when they say, I'm getting to this place where I can't download all this data. I'll go to class for one day and listening to the lecture and reading the book and following along and being in the midst of all these other students is so overstimulating and so triggering to all these different symptoms that I have that for days afterward I find myself unable to cope, unable to translate, and struggling to continue. So having given all that kind of like brief case study stuff to give some context to this, the first thing I would tell you, Ryder, and I'm sure that this exists in Canada, here in America, if you're going to a university and you have a mental illness, especially if it's diagnosed and you have a treatment team, you can get documentation for that. You can take it back to your university, and you can ask for special accommodations for the disability. I've written this paperwork for probably a dozen students over the course of my career, and usually it's addressed to the whatever the health department is of the university. And I'll send them a letter that says, hey, my patient's diagnosed with X, Y, and Z. I believe this inhibits their ability to perform at school. I'm asking for special accommodations. Usually they have developed paperwork, which they'll send back to me, the clinician, and they'll say, here's what we need from you, Jim. This kind of documentation to substantiate your claim, and then what recommendations do you have for the student? Now, in this day and age, you can probably have recommendations like, I believe the student needs extra time on assignments. I believe the student should be able to take any class that's available distance to be able to do that online if that serves the student, or take it in a different kind of context. I believe that they should have access to open notes tests. We can even mandate that sometimes. All sorts of accommodations can be made for you. And those exist to facilitate people who are struggling with mental health episodes to get their degree. Because you are every bit as much a competent and capable human being and capable of doing this science as anybody else. You just have to manage it differently because of the thing that you're facing. It's a challenge. And there are usually systems in place to accommodate and facilitate that so that you can still be successful. So the first piece of advice I would have is absolutely checking in with your school and seeing what kind of accommodation it can exist, how to get your clinicians involved with the school to get some kind of change so that you could at least give this a try. And you mentioned that you're full-time, you don't think you can keep this up full-time. One of the accommodations might be that there's a part-time allowance for you without punishment. Because I realize for some people, like you lose a scholarship or something like that if you drop down to part-time, or sometimes the program requires you to stay full-time in order to stay enrolled. Well, a reasonable accommodation would be let the student go down to part-time until they eventually achieve a better homeostasis with their autism, and then they can function at a higher rate and they'll go back to full-time. So all of those are suggestions that ultimately allow you to cope with this challenge without giving up on your dream. I think that we do agree, though, that it's okay for you to right-size life to what you're capable of. That's allowed, and for some people it's a hard pill to swallow, but I do believe there's a way forward. I don't want you to give up yet. These are still the early days of your autism diagnosis, and you're still adapting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard thing to deal with, though.
Definitely.
Autism is definitely a lifelong thing, and it's a hardware thing.
Stimming is self-stimulating behaviors.
Oh, okay, got it.
So, handshaking, rocking,
Rubbing,
spinning,
yeah.
repeating words
fingers.
or phrases, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. So all of those loops and all those different manifestations of your autism, are they going to be lifelong? Not probably in the same level of severity. These are still, like we said, the early days, and you're still experimenting with all this stuff.
It would be nice if you could find somebody who is also high-functioning high-functioning autism.
Yes. In
To
Canada
kinda
has
ask-
Anami. Remember, Coffee
Yeah.
Maple Scoop donated to them.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was. It was the Center, because it had an R-E in it. I want to say it was like Center
just
for
Google
Mental Health.
that. That should work.
Just type in Center into your Google. Center Canada.
Nailing it.
Make sure you put the R-E, though.
We're doing great.
Yeah, we're doing great work here. Reach out to Coffee Maple Scoop. He'll tell you where to go.
No, but that'd be nice to have, like, almost kind of like an
Support
autis-
group.
Yeah, a sponsorship type thing, where you've got somebody that,
Well, there are major
has-
organizations for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody that can, like, hey, here's what I did, and here's some things that helped me. And
Right.
something like that. That would be
Yeah, I
great.
think that autism support for friends and family and for you is a huge piece of this puzzle. And
Yeah.
there are huge organizations that
Yeah.
provide that kind of stuff. So I would hope that you'd get tracked into that too. But Anonymous, don't give up. Don't tell yourself that you can't do these things. You're learning to do these things.
Yeah.
You are going to have to afford yourself that patience, though. Because if you're comparing yourself to who you were before these symptoms manifested, that's not a fair comparison. You have to adapt. You have to find your own way to do this. That may take time, and you may need accommodations to get that done. So I want you to be patient with yourself and give yourself permission to make this up as you go along. And it may be that you graduate with C's instead of A's. And it may be that your research is 10 pages younger, than you want it to be. And it may be that you need accommodations with your professors to make this work. But that's not surrender. That's adaptation. And that's fine. There's plenty of wonderful professionals, scientists, healthcare providers that live with autism. It can be managed. That's not to minimize what you're going through, but it's to give you a little bit of hope here, to tell you that there is a way through this. Don't give up. Mm-hmm. Great question, though. All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about genuine gratitude. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robert Brownie Jr. Mintz, Kayla Lansbury, Crazy Banana Scoop, Malaya, Cindy Ash. Would you like to sponsor the show? Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Our second question from In the News is...
In the nude.
Hundreds turned out to a park in Lincoln, Nebraska in April, armed with pool needles to fight over what? If you'd like to join the therapy producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
The body of Abraham Lincoln. Final
I can
answer.
make this multiple choice if you need me
We
to.
might.
In April?
In April.
And this pool noodles.
Pool noodles.
And they all fought with pool noodles over something.
Yes.
And this is in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely the body of Abraham
Sounds
Lincoln.
familiar. All right,
Yeah.
give us the multiple
The
choice.
exhumed body of Abraham Lincoln. Final answer.
You know, Abe Lincoln had nothing to do with Nebraska.
So why'd they name it Lincoln, Nebraska?
There's Lincoln everything all over the world. Anyway,
That's very
I'm
disrespectful.
not.
named
I'm
it
not
after
going
the
to
car.
engage you in this
Very
conversation. Here we go.
disrespectful.
A.
They named it after the car.
Yeah.
A.
They named it
Here are your
after the car.
options. They fought over A, who has the rights to the name Josh, B, the proper spelling of the word donut, C, who gets to keep the world's largest Cheeto, or D, who would win in a fight between Harry Potter and Anakin Skywalker.
Oh my god.
I remember this now.
I do too.
I knew it. I knew it sounded familiar. I knew I'd know
Yeah,
it with the
it's-
multiple choice.
It's the Josh one.
It's the Josh one.
Yeah. And then there was like some little kid that they announced as the official only real Josh.
Yeah.
And everybody else took the dive.
Armed with pool needles, Josh
Noodles.
Noodle. What'd I say?
Needles.
You said needles both times.
First
now.
time I heard it, I was
Sorry.
like, what?
Armed with pool noodles,
Pool needles would be very bad.
Joshes from across the country met at Air Park, where they brawled as onlookers with other names cheered from the sidelines. In the end, it was 4-year-old Lincoln resident Josh Vinson Jr.,
Nice.
dubbed Little Josh
Yeah.
by his peers, who was crowned the winner.
That's fair. You got to let the new guy have it. Everybody else has had their time with that name.
4 years old, you're telling me not?
He's the only true Josh, man. He won. Okay?
I think they let him win.
No.
I'm gonna.
That kid, I'm sure it was a bloodbath, man. You see, everybody else brought pool noodles. He brought a machete. That's the trick.
No, he brought pool needles.
Yeah, he brought the pool needles.
Yeah.
Shooting them through a blow dart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how he wins.
Smart.
He had needles
Blood
that he dipped
sport.
in Hep C.
He's playing the long game.
Yeah.
They all just got out of his way. Like, that guy wants it. Let him have it. Genuine gratitude. Hi there. I recently started a gratitude journal, and frankly, I'm having a pretty difficult time feeling genuine. I don't have a bad life, and I know there are positive things to be thankful for, but whenever I sit down to write these out, the only ones that come to mind are, oh, my family, or the roof over my head, or food, etc. While I understand that all these are truly wonderful, and I should be thankful for them, I can't help but feel they're cliche and almost trite. I grew up in a religious home/school, and so we said those things and those words almost daily. I try to look at the smaller things in life to be grateful for, but have been having a tough time honing in. Do you guys have any tips or suggestions to help make this process easier? Thanks, Anonymous. Ungrateful Anonymous, I'll add.
Well, I mean, you could just quit doing it.
Yeah, just don't do that anymore.
Who told you to do this? That's what I want to know.
I 100% know it was us.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I 100% know it was you.
I'm the one that did the gratitude journal? That
Yeah.
probably does sound like something Jim would say. Because
That
it sounds very wise. That's why I would guess.
Really?
So how
Here's
do
the
you
thing.
zoom in on gratitude, Tangible?
So, number one, if it's something like your therapist wanted you to do this, go back to your therapist and explain your concern.
Yeah, get that
Ask,
feedback.
what am I supposed to do with this? What is the purpose of this? Or how can I get better at this? I don't know, whatever
Sure.
the question is. If you're doing it because you think it'd be valuable and it doesn't feel genuine and it doesn't feel honest, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Or change it up. That would be the other thing I would do. Instead of focusing on today I'm going to write about things I'm grateful for, maybe today I'm going to write about things I accomplished.
Yeah.
Maybe today I'll write about here are the top 5 greatest accomplishments of the last 5 years.
I like that.
Or, honestly, because I think positivity does more than just gratitude.
Yeah, the purpose of the gratitude is to get to positivity. That's what
Yeah.
we're going for.
So I think there's a lot of different. I think if you widen the scope and focus on the positivity aspect, I think that would be more helpful for you, and you wouldn't get stuck in that position where you're like, you have to think of things to be grateful for, because
Yeah.
I get that.
It can be daunting.
Yeah.
And feel very insincere because you're just
Right.
sitting here listing these generic first tier
Yeah.
things because they're there and you are glad. But no, but I think here's the theory of where I think gratitude or even the achievement concept is trying to go. So if you put your two hands here on the desk and I pull out a hammer and I smash one of those fingers, you could notice that this one finger's in a lot of pain. And I could also try to bring your attention to the other 9 aren't.
I'm so grateful that the other
Aren't
9
you glad the
fingers
other
are-
9 fingers are not in pain? And so, like, it's an interesting little dynamic here when therapists are trying to get you to focus on gratitude. And sometimes it's because we want you to appreciate perspective and context. So nobody's stupid enough to believe that you're going to be grateful that the 9 fingers are not throbbing and ignore the one that is and sit there and put a smile on your face. No, we're not here for toxic positivity, right? We don't want that either. So we want you to be able to acknowledge things that you're struggling with in life. What we mean when we're talking about gratitude as a piece of that is that we want you to appreciate the complexity even of pain and discouragement in your life. For instance, I am so frustrated at my job. I feel overlooked by my boss. I feel disrespected by my cubicle neighbor. These are very frustrating things. And I come home and I think about them and I dwell on them and I think constantly about changing jobs and getting something better. Well, what you're doing in that sense, if you're looking for a new job all the time, you're responding looking for solutions only to the things that are bad at the job, but you're failing to see all the many things that are good that perhaps will also be lost if you were to go look for a new job. So it isn't that we're against it, we're trying to influence a fuller picture of what you're going through, which is what we mean by gratitude. So we might sit with you and say, Anonymous, it sounds like your boss has been really rough this week. Oh my gosh, so terrible, so terrible. Tell me about the best part of your day today, Anonymous. Huh? Oh, what was the high point? Oh, I gave this PowerPoint presentation to a bunch of my coworkers I've been working on for a couple of weeks. It actually went really well. They liked it. They said I did a good job. They actually wanted me to save it and send it to all of them. That's fantastic. So what are we doing? We're calibrating your fuller understanding of work life by taking stock of gratitude. Also good things. Or as Nick said, achievements. That's fine.
I also do something similar in that I try to look for silver linings.
There you go.
But if I was doing that, I would intentionally stay away from the word gratitude.
Yeah, I think
because I think that
kind of a pigeonhole.
Well, yeah, but not only that, but it reframes it in an aspect or a perspective that I don't want it to be framed in. So,
Right.
for example, if I'm something happens at work and I got stuck doing this extra work or something that I didn't feel I should be doing. It's just this project that just got dumped on me. I'm upset about it. I try to find that silver lining and I try to see opportunity in obstacles.
Sure.
So, okay, this is an obstacle. I need to reframe this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to demonstrate to my coworkers that I'm dependable.
Right.
This is an opportunity for me to show I can do this when other people couldn't do it.
Yes.
This is an opportunity for me to whatever, fill in the blank.
There's something good here.
Right. But I don't like having to say that I'm grateful for it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that I can still see something as optimistic as an opportunity without having to say that I'm grateful that it happened.
Right.
And this is something that happens a lot of times too with tragedy.
Yes.
There are some terrible things that happen in our lives that if we start associating silver linings with gratitude, then it kind of muddies the water.
Right.
Right? I can say, yeah, this terrible experience that I went through, it made me grow. It put me
Right.
into a position where I had to overcome this trauma.
Right.
Right? But I'm not going to say I'm grateful for it.
Right.
That's not a gratitude thing.
Right.
I wish it never happened.
Yeah.
I would rather it have never happened.
I agree.
But it did, so here's what I do with it.
Yeah, we have to steer away, guys, from toxic positivity. And unfortunately, and I'll own this, I think religious communities have been one of the greatest perpetrators of this. You know, where it's like, hey, Job, did your entire family get murdered? Praise Jesus. Praise God. It's all for a purpose, brother. Just hang in there, man. We'll see you at the barbecue. And just like, I don't think that's very healthy.
Death cult? The celebrating death cult?
Yeah.
That could be bad?
That one has sometimes steered in the wrong direction. From time to time, every millennia or so.
I mean, if you say so.
Yeah, we've goofed a few times. So, yeah, I think that toxic positivity...
I'm glad he's here to tell us these things.
Yeah. Guys, I have news for you. Christianity has made some mistakes. I don't have a list of them. Somebody does.
I'm glad you're apologizing for all of religion.
I'll take
That's
ownership.
nice.
Well, really, we just kind of gather up all the mistakes and debt, and we just pin that to one dude, and he takes the fall.
That seems
and that's
to be
basically the entire theory of our
seems to
case.
be the whole-
Yeah, that's just basically debt relief. So, yeah, toxic positivity, very, very dangerous, and gratitude can sometimes get way too woven into that, where you're supposed to be grateful for every punch in the face. The other way around that I want you to think about it, and here's the deal, Anonymous. At the end of the day, any therapist who's asking you to do anything gratitude-based or list of positives or whatever, here's what we're doing. If you really want to know what we're up to, we're trying to teach you how to do something called positive reframing. And you heard Nick actually use that word several times. A positive reframe is asking you to look at a situation from multiple angles and to appreciate that in some ways it's going to be okay. Or there's something about this that you're not bothered by, or in some cases positive. Here's an example. So I've been doing this diet bet thing every month since April. Overall, I have lost 20 pounds. In round 3 of diet bet, I failed to lose the weight. So I needed to lose 10 pounds. I lost none of those 10 pounds. And I finished the month at exactly the same weight.
He didn't talk about that nearly as much on the show as he talked about the one that
I'm announcing it now. I'm announcing it here and now.
Probably coincidence.
The bet just ended.
While we're in the show, we had a whole hour of Patreon.
The bet just ended yesterday. And so I did not meet
about the other one the whole way through.
We wasted so much time talking about fireworks.
So I won 2 in a row, and I lost the third one. Now we're in the 4th one. So here's what happened, though. In my reflections on our diet bet page, I decided, I'm going to reflect out loud, and I also want to demonstrate to other people, like, here's some of the theories applied that Nick and I are always talking about. One of them, solution-focused brief therapy. So I said, hey, I did not lose the 10 pounds that I needed to lose. I failed this bet. I am losing this money. I feel terrible about it. I'm upset at myself. I'm disappointed. But those thoughts are only so motivating. At some point, it backfires on Jim. And that, for me personally, that'll take me back down the road I don't want to go down. So I asked myself a different question. Jim, how did you manage to not make it get any worse? You didn't lose 10 pounds. How many pounds did you gain, Jim? Well, none. Wow! For a whole month, you sustained the weight loss that you had for the other 2 months. Hey, man, I know you had a different goal than that, but we have to acknowledge you didn't fall back down the mountain. You kept your place. That's important. There's something there. How did you manage to do that, Jim? Oh, well, I guess I didn't do as much fasting and stuff, so I didn't lose any weight, but, I wasn't as indulgent as I used to be, and I didn't, binge on beer and, these other things that caused me to gain all that weight, so I guess that's how I stayed where I was. Excellent, Jim. We want you to notice that. So that's a positive reframe, and that's essentially what the gratitude concept is. Jim, what are you grateful for in that? Well, I don't know. So gratitude can be a distracting word, but to reframe it as positive, or another thing that we'll say sometimes instead of gratitude journals, we'll say, we just want you to keep an upside journal, or on the other hand list. So there's what happened. On one hand, I didn't lose any weight. On the other hand, I didn't gain any weight.
Right. And
that's all we're trying to get you to do, buddy.
Well, another thing I like to do, too, is just kind of ask, well, what'd you learn?
What'd you learn from it? Yes.
Because if I'm leaving a situation, if I can't leave a situation better, I at least want to leave it smarter.
Sure.
So if I didn't finish diet bet having lost the weight I wanted to lose, then, well, what did I learn? I learned something.
Right, I learned what didn't work.
I learned something.
Yes.
I learned what didn't work. I learned how not to lose weight.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I take that information and then I start the next diet bet just a little bit smarter than I did last
That is
one.
exactly what I did. In the thread, that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, first, why do I think I wasn't successful? So what did I learn from this? And I even said in there, I said, I'll be damned if I'm going to lose this money and lose this bet and not get any knowledge out of it. I'm going to get something. So I'm going to reflect on this and figure it out. And I did. I did an autopsy and kind of figured, okay, here's what didn't work this month. Here's why I think I wasn't successful. But then I did ask the reverse question, which is essentially this gratitude question. On the other hand, Jim, how did you prevent it from not getting worse?
You know what? I think if you're able to get on top of this, and you're able to kind of practice some of this self-discipline, to be able to lose the weight,
yes,
I think your Invisalign thing will work out for you.
If I can do the one, I can do the
Because
other.
it's the same thing.
You see, if I lose
It's
all that
the
weight in my gums,
no.
then the Invisalign will just fit on there.
It's
make it better.
all in your mind. It's all in
Well, it's
your
in your
approach.
mouth. It's
It's
in your
the
mouth, Nick.
same concept.
Yes.
The same thing that would prevent you from being successful long term in diet bed is the same thing that would prevent you from being successful in sticking with your Invisalign.
Pizza
No,
and beer.
no, it's
Oh.
overcoming discomfort.
Oh, yeah. That's probably it. Yeah, you got it right there. And being indulgent. I think that's part of it too. So yeah, that's what gratitude means, guys. So if you're out there and you're thinking, man, I want to incorporate that, it's not so much this list of things that you ought to be thankful for. It's really just trying to get you to notice things that you're struggling in, but then doing an upside list or an on the other hand list to notice, well, in what ways is it still okay? Or in what aspects of your job do you also appreciate? Your marriage is struggling, okay, but if you only focus on what's not going right, you'll convince yourself that it's worse than it really is. So we want you to have a full and complex perspective that really appreciates also the upsides, also the other hand. So notice that. If you really want to practice this, get a friend to smash one of your fingers with a hammer. That's
You can do it yourself.
That's how we train.
You don't even need to get a friend.
That's how we train.
Don't bother a friend.
Just do that. Well, how are you going to hit one of your 10 fingers if you have to hold the hammer? So you guys don't think this shit through. That's why I'm here.
You're
Okay?
right.
Yeah, I accept both of your apologies.
You win.
We're at the end of the show, thankfully, mercifully. And we need to thank some folks that are contributing to us at patreon.com/therapy. Want to thank new Therapals, Jennifer Grayson, she upgraded to a double Therapal, Protect and Scoop, that's a good name, Sonia, and D-Scoop, and Adam Ballas. That feels right. I think I nailed that.
Sounds good. And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Saccharine 16, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members.
Man, you are just nailing it today.
Oh my
Nick
God.
showed up drunk tonight.
Oh, these pool needles are everywhere. I'm getting stabbed out.
The Theraproducers. Thank you. Smitty Scoop, who will be here in town.
Is that true?
Yeah, he's.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to
got-
text thread.
Jesus Christ.
I don't
weird
read
lie.
anything you send me.
Be a weird joke for Nick to
Yeah.
make.
He's going to be here. Just kidding.
Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr., Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Ellie O'Dare, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, King of Student Loan Debt, Dr. Ben Don, Crazy Man on a Scoop, Mason Miller, Scott Jameson, Carolyn Albert, Leon Kassab, Kevin Chamberlain, Malaya, Richard Macy, Ezekiel Lawrence, Polygon, and Cindy Ash.
If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited
And why wouldn't
and
you?
enjoy our spontaneous side projects, you should go to patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we got for this week's session. I want to thank our landlords, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social podcast and their inferior Batmom shirt. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today, we really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided in your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, Instagram /podtherapyguys, I think, Twitter @podtherapyguys, and patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week. Are we going to the gym tomorrow?
No.
If you want to get
Thanks
the
for
official
asking.
Pod Therapy Batmom t-shirt,
No!
head over to storejingle.com where they're on sale right now.
Jingle is spelled E-L.
It's just not true.
That's true.
You're sabotaging your own store, Jim.
No. PodTherapyBaitShop.com. We need a jingle.
Bye.
Justin, help us. I don't even think Justin. Oh, no.
Store jingle, store update, store song. We got a store.